On the evening of May 3rd, 1999, an F5 tornado, the most powerful rating on the Fujita scale, tore through the Oklahoma City metropolitan area with winds exceeding 300 miles per hour. But 3 years earlier, on May 26, 1996, another devastating tornado struck just north of Oklahoma City, ripping through the town of Edmond and earning a chilling nickname
from local residents who witnessed its power, the finger of God. This is the story of the 1996 Oklahoma tornado outbreak and the violent tornado that left an unforgettable mark on those who survived it. Oklahoma sits in the heart of Tornado Alley, a region of the central United States particularly prone to violent tornadoes. The geography creates perfect conditions. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico collides with cool, dry air from Canada and the Rocky Mountains. When these air masses meet during spring and early summer, the result can be explosive, massive supercell thunderstorms that spawn devastating tornadoes. For Oklahomans, tornadoes are a fact of life. Children grow up practicing tornado drills in school. Every home has a designated shelter area. Weather forecasters are local celebrities during storm season. And when the sky turns green and the sirens wail, people know exactly what to do. But even in a place where tornadoes are expected, some storms stand out. May 26, 1996, started as a typical late spring day in Oklahoma. Temperatures were warm, the air was humid, and meteorologists at the National Weather Service were tracking atmospheric conditions that looked increasingly dangerous. By early afternoon, they issued severe thunderstorm watches, then tornado watches. The ingredients were all there: instability, wind shear, moisture. It was going to be a bad night. As evening approached, supercell thunderstorms began developing across central Oklahoma. These weren't ordinary thunderstorms, they were rotating monsters, each one capable of producing tornadoes, and they were heading towards populated areas. Around 7:30 p.m., a tornado touched down near the town of Edmond, just north of Oklahoma City. What happened next would be burned into the memories of everyone who witnessed it. The tornado that struck Edmond wasn't the largest ever recorded, but it was exceptionally violent. It was later rated F3 on the Fujita scale, with winds estimated between 158 and 206 miles per hour. But what made this tornado particularly memorable was its appearance and behavior. Witnesses described it as looking like a massive finger descending from the sky, a tight, well-defined funnel that seemed almost deliberate in its movement. It wasn't a wide, wedge-shaped tornado that covered a broad path. It was narrow and focused, like a giant drill bit boring into the earth. It looked like the finger of God pointing down at us, one survivor said. The name stuck. The tornado carved a path through residential neighborhoods in Edmond, destroying homes, vehicles, and lives. Trees that had stood for decades were snapped like matchsticks. Houses were reduced to piles of rubble. Cars were tossed through the air like toys. And people who had taken shelter prayed that their walls would hold. The sound was unforgettable. Survivors consistently described the sound of a powerful tornado as similar to a freight train, a deep, roaring rumble that shakes everything and drowns out all other noise. But this tornado had something extra, a high-pitched screaming sound, like metal tearing, that accompanied the roar. Inside their homes, people huddled in bathrooms, closets, and basements as the tornado passed over. They felt the pressure change, ears popping as the air was sucked out of rooms. They heard debris impacting their walls. They felt their houses shake and creak. And they wondered if they would survive. For some, the experience was over in seconds. The tornado passed by their location quickly, leaving them shaken but alive. For others, it felt like an eternity as the tornado seemed to hover, tearing apart everything around them. When it was finally over and people emerged from their shelters, they found a landscape transformed. Entire neighborhoods had been devastated. Homes that had been there minutes before were simply gone, reduced to concrete slabs with debris scattered hundreds of yards away. Trees were debarked, stripped of every leaf and branch. Power lines were down everywhere. And in the fading evening light, people began searching for neighbors and loved ones. Miraculously, despite the tornado's violence, there were no direct fatalities in Edmond. People had heeded the warnings, taken shelter, and survived. But many were injured, and the property damage was catastrophic. Dozens of homes were completely destroyed,
and hundreds more were damaged. The emergency response was immediate and massive. Fire departments, police, ambulances, and emergency management personnel from across the region converged on Edmond. Search and rescue teams went door to door, or rather debris pile to debris pile, looking for survivors and ensuring everyone was accounted for. The National Guard was activated. The Red Cross set up shelters. Utility crews began the enormous task of restoring power and gas services, and volunteers poured in from neighboring communities to help with the initial search efforts and begin the long process of cleanup. But the Edmond tornado wasn't the only one that night. The same storm system produced multiple tornadoes across Oklahoma, including several other significant ones. It was an outbreak, a night when numerous tornadoes spawned from a single weather system. One particularly tragic tornado struck near Watonga, west of Oklahoma City, killing 2 people. Others caused damage in rural areas, destroying farms and outbuildings. In total, the outbreak produced over a dozen tornadoes across Oklahoma that evening. The meteorological conditions that night were textbook perfect for severe weather. A strong dry line, the boundary between moist air from the Gulf and dry air from the west, had set up across central Oklahoma. A low-pressure system was providing lift. Wind shear was extreme, allowing storms to rotate, and the atmosphere was incredibly unstable. When these conditions align, tornadoes aren't just possible, they're almost inevitable. The question isn't whether tornadoes will form, but where they'll touch down, and how strong they'll be. The National Weather Service had done an excellent job forecasting the outbreak. Warnings were issued well in advance. Local media, television, and radio stations provided continuous coverage, interrupting regular programming to show radar and track the storms. Storm spotters were positioned throughout the region, calling in reports of tornado touchdowns. This early warning system undoubtedly saved lives. In the Edmond area, people had at least 20 minutes of warning before the tornado struck. That's enough time to get to shelter if you take the warning seriously. And most people did. Oklahomans don't mess around with tornado warnings. When the sirens sound and the TV meteorologists say a tornado's coming, people take cover. That's why, despite the violence of the Edmond tornado and the extensive damage it caused, there were no deaths in the immediate impact zone. The aftermath of the tornado was both devastating and inspiring. Devastating because so many people had lost everything, their homes, their possessions, their sense of security. Some families had been in their homes for generations. Now those homes were gone, and with them, irreplaceable memories and mementos. But it was also inspiring because of how the community responded. Within hours, volunteers were organizing. Within days, donation centers were overflowing with supplies. Neighbors who had been spared helped neighbors who had lost everything. Churches, community groups, and organizations mobilized to provide food, shelter, and support. There's something about surviving a disaster together that bonds a community. People who had never met before became friends while clearing debris. Teenagers worked alongside elderly residents, passing boards and nails chain gang style. Local businesses donated equipment and supplies. It was Oklahoma at its best, tough, resilient, and united. The cleanup and rebuilding process took months. Insurance adjusters worked overtime, processing claims. Construction crews were booked solid for the entire summer. Temporary housing had to be arranged for families whose homes were uninhabitable. But gradually, Edmond recovered. New homes rose from the rubble, often with improved tornado shelters built in. Trees were replanted. Life returned to something approaching normal. Though normal is relative when you've experienced a violent tornado, many survivors dealt with PTSD and anxiety, especially during future severe weather events. The sound of sirens or the sight of a dark sky could trigger panic. Some people moved away, unable to live with the constant fear of another tornado. But most stayed, because this is Oklahoma. Tornadoes are part of life here. You can't let fear control you. You prepare, you stay informed. You take warnings seriously, and you rebuild when necessary. The 1996 Edmond tornado also became an important case study for meteorologists and emergency managers. What had worked well? The early warning system had clearly been effective. Media coverage had been comprehensive. The community's preparedness had saved lives. What could be improved? Some people hadn't taken the warnings seriously, assuming the tornado would miss them. Some had delayed taking shelter, thinking they had more time than they actually did. And the need for more storm shelters and safe rooms in homes became apparent. In the years following 1996, Oklahoma invested heavily in tornado preparedness. Schools built safe rooms. Public buildings added tornado shelters. Programs helped homeowners install storm shelters. Building codes were strengthened. And public education campaigns emphasized the importance of having a plan and taking warnings seriously. These improvements would prove crucial just 3 years later on May 3rd, 1999, when an even more powerful tornado outbreak struck the Oklahoma City metro area. The Bridge Creek Moore F5 tornado killed 36 people and caused over $1 billion in damage. It was one of the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded, with winds measured by Doppler radar at 301 miles per hour, the highest wind speed ever recorded on Earth. But because of lessons learned from events like the 1996 Edmond tornado, because of improved warning systems, better shelters, and a population that took warnings seriously, the death toll was far lower than it could have been. In a tornado that destroyed over 8,000 structures, only 36 people died. Each death was a tragedy, but without the preparation and warning systems in place, the toll could have been in the hundreds. The nickname Finger of God captures something profound about how people experience tornadoes. There's an almost supernatural quality to them, the way they seem to select certain houses while leaving neighbors untouched. The incredible violence of the winds. The sheer destructive power concentrated in such a narrow path. One house is completely destroyed while the house next door has minor damage. One side of a street is devastated while the other side is barely touched. It seems random, arbitrary, like some divine judgment deciding who will be spared and who will lose everything. Of course, there's nothing supernatural about it. Tornadoes follow the physics of rotating air masses. The seemingly random destruction is actually the result of complex atmospheric dynamics, ground-level friction, and the specific path the tornado takes. But when you're living through it, when your house is shaking and the sky has turned green-black and there's a roaring monster outside, it feels like something more than just weather. The finger of God metaphor also reflects the humility that comes with surviving a tornado. You're reminded of how small you are, how little control you have, how quickly everything you've built can be taken away. It's a sobering experience that changes how you view the world. Today, the neighborhoods that were destroyed in 1996 have been rebuilt. New homes stand where old ones fell. The trees have grown back, though they're not yet as tall as the ones that were lost. Life has moved on, but the survivors remember. They remember the green sky. They remember the sound. They remember huddling in their bathrooms, praying. They remember emerging to find their world changed. And they remember the community that came together to rebuild. May 26th, 1996, is etched in Edmond's history. It's a date that locals remember, especially when storm season rolls around each spring. When the sky turns dark and the sirens sound, they remember the finger of God, and they don't hesitate. They take shelter immediately, because they know. They've seen what a tornado can do. They've experienced the power firsthand, and they respect it. Oklahoma continues to be struck by tornadoes every year. Some years are worse than others. The state has seen multiple F5/EF5 tornadoes, the strongest possible rating. Moore, Oklahoma, has been hit by catastrophic tornadoes multiple times in 1999, 2003, and 2013. El Reno in 2013 produced the widest tornado ever recorded, 2.6 miles wide. But Oklahomans endure. They rebuild. They improve their preparedness. They invest in better warning systems and stronger shelters. And they help each other when disaster strikes. The story of the 1996 Edmond tornado is ultimately a story of survival and resilience. It's a reminder of nature's power and humanity's vulnerability. But it's also a testament to community strength, to the importance of preparation, and to the human capacity to rebuild after devastation. The finger of God touched down on May 26, 1996. It destroyed homes and shattered lives, but it didn't destroy the spirit of the people it affected. They survived, they rebuilt, and they made sure they'd be better prepared next time. Because in Oklahoma, there's always a next time. The question isn't whether another tornado will come. The question is when and whether you'll be ready. The people of Edmond learned that lesson in 1996, and they've never forgotten.